Hi, everybody. Welcome to Watches with Dennis. It's the Saturday live stream. I am back. I suppose this would normally be a pretty typical back time period. However, I have been doing weekday streams for the last few weeks, but did not do any this week, didn't do any pre-recorded videos. I don't even think I put in a post during the weekdays. So just a mix of things. I had I had one evening work meeting. I had a couple other project sort of things come up. I wasn't traveling or anything. My birthday was during the week, so I had to clear out one of those days anyway. So anyway, we are now back, and we're going to have a more traditional Saturday live stream in terms of covering new watch releases. I was trying to think, do I have a theme? Because sometimes it's just whatever's new, and sometimes I don't. I kind of walked backwards into a theme, I guess is the best way to describe it. So there are 4 new models from 4 different companies that we're going to cover today. The claim to fame for all of them is they are all limited edition. So I know some of you are probably saying, well, what's the point of talking about a limited edition watch if I don't have the opportunity to get it? First, if you're watching, you're probably already familiar with this, but if you weren't, not all limited editions are created equal. Some limited editions are very easy to go ahead and get a hold of, either because the limit count is so ridiculously high as to be pointless. And I'm looking at you, Seiko, though we don't have a Seiko today. Or the price point that it's at, the model or the brand that it isn't particularly popular. So it being limited doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a whole lot of demand for it. Of course, our mileage will vary on each of these as we go through them, and you can decide whether or not it's going to be particularly difficult to get. None of them are cheap watches, but they do run a pretty decent range of, fairly, I think I got one that's going to be sub $2,000, and there's one, I believe, there's one that's going to be more close to 40,000. So that's kind of our range for today. Speaking of today on the wrist is a Bulova Accutron. This is now my smallest watch at, I believe, 34 millimeters. Excuse me. So I think I mentioned on the last live stream, my dad, he doesn't wear watches anymore. So he actually a few weeks ago gave me all of his. He had like 5 or so. Now, some of those were like gift novelty watches, like sports themed watches and such. So I don't know what I'm going to do with those, quite frankly. I don't consider them part of the collection per se, but 2 that he wore are. So there's this one, which he didn't wear very much. It was his employer gave them out I think at 25 years, you've got to watch. It was one of those things. So they did both of us apparently. And Seiko, which I wore last week, which has a chipped sapphire crystal. So I actually have a crystal I already have a crystal press because I messed around with watchmaking during the pandemic. So I'm going to actually try and replace the crystal myself because I'm telling myself, how hard can it be? But I'll tell you how I play it safe. And I play it safe because I ordered 2 crystals. So that way, if I break one, I got one more to go. And then they're like $19 a piece. So it wasn't like a big deal, but they are not here yet. He wore these on those stretchy Twistoflex bracelets, which are very difficult to size. And I don't like how they kind of pull at the arm hair. So anyway, I got on my list a new tool to get, a parallel pliers set, supposed to make those easier to change out. But for the time being, I finally a couple days ago got a couple of simple black leather straps because both of them are gold colored. This one's gold filled, I believe. The other one is the Seiko's just a gold color, like a PVD. So black's always safe with the yellow gold look. Black's always safe with pretty much everything. So that's about all I have to say on any of that. I don't think I'll do reviews on those watches. They'll be in the state of the collection video, which I know I'm still doing housekeeping items. I normally do state of the collection in November. Last year I did it in October. That was way too early to do it. I might just go ahead and hold really close to the end of the year this time and do December. I'm not planning to buy anything else this year after the Parmigiani Tonda PF. I've kind of been done. I suppose if I got the call for the Rolex sub, I'd go ahead and get it, but I'm not looking for anything right now. And in terms of my watch sales, because I had a post for the 99-cent club members, I was updating it. I don't know if I've done the latest updates. The only thing left is the Oris Pro Pilot X that I have, the gray on gray one. That's the only one still for sale that I have not gotten rid of. I continue to get offers on it, but everyone is like, I want to give you $500. It's already like the lowest priced one. So no, I know it has a few scratches. It's titanium. You're going to have to live with that, but it's quite a bit less than what Oris charges. So let me get caught up with the chat, and then we are going to jump into the first of these 4 models that are new, or at least new to me. Now they're new to everyone. They're all new to all of you. You'll all be. I don't know if you're going to care about any of them, but they're all going to be new to you. So Joe, welcome to the live stream, and thank you for being a 99-cent club member. I do very much appreciate that. Likewise to Tuna, greetings to you. Glad you could make it. And Koji, all 3 of you 99-cent club members, a whole 99 cents a month. What do I do with that money? I don't know. Koji was in town. I think I blew half of the year's budget on buying lunch. So I'm a generous host is how I approach it. Tuna says those stretchy bracelets, the Twistoflex, can be a pain. Sizing is they weren't too hard to like rehook in, but oh my gosh, are you bending a lot of metal? I could see why it would just be easier to make sure you got one like sized for you. And one of the tricks I've noticed, like my dad and my wrist sizes are very different. Like for his Seiko, I had to take out 10 lengths of the Twistoflex to get it down to my size. So I just got little baby wrists. Pixel Punch, welcome to the live stream. Glad you could make it. And Neff made it. Neff doesn't always make it. Neff, thank you for being here. Glad you could make it, and glad that you are a 99-cent club member. All right. I don't know if you're glad about this. The first of our 4 limited edition models that we are going to cover today, but this is from Monochrome. Links for all these articles are in the video description, so you can actually read about this. This is the Delma Oceanmaster Oliver Heer Ocean Racing. Yes, there's oceans mentioned twice. And there's 3 words that start with the letter O in this title of this watch, which makes it quite a mouthful. Here's the thing, and I'd like to know, those of you who are watching live, if you could say it in the chat, but if you're watching the recording, feel free to comment. Have you heard of Delma before? I had not. So I was really excited to include this one because I'd never heard of this brand. And apparently the name has been around for 100 years. So now, that doesn't mean a lot. We know lots of brands like Blancpain, which were around at one point and then kind of went away, and then the name comes back, and it's kind of like purchased heritage, right? The chain has been broken. Ball watch is another example. It's not the ball of old. You could even argue Hamilton isn't really the Hamilton of old, even though that transitionary period really was relatively seamless. But, moving from a U.S. manufacturer to a Swiss manufacturer did result in a lot of differences going on. But anyway, so I saw this when I was perusing Monochrome, and I was like, okay, well, the watch itself looks like they made some interesting choices here. But since I'm not familiar with the brand, I'm not familiar with the Oceanmaster series. It's a dive watch, but, well, it's a dive-capable watch. Maybe that's the best way to put it. You can see from this image here that's on the screen right now that the bezel is the big telling point. This is not the standard countdown bezel. This is a 360 bezel. You see it's got the compass markings on it. But the depth rating on the watch is 500 meters. So it is a significant depth rating for the watch. Obviously, it's tied for it's like a single man racing thing that this is celebrating. So that's where the tie-in with the Oliver Heer racing team comes from with it. One of the noteworthy things that I thought was eye-catching about it is a fully loomed dial. We are seeing that more and more, I feel, usually on lower end watches. And this is the lowest of the watches we're going to talk about today, but this is not an inexpensive watch. It would be argued as being relatively affordable because it is under $2,000. Its price is actually in euros. It's 1,500. So dollars is going to be, it gets weird with the VAT and stuff. Dollars is very similar is the way I would describe it. Sizing, this is a bit of a chonker. So this is a 44 millimeter diameter watch, which is not unusual for a dive watch. Just under 14 millimeters in thickness. Again, for 500 meters of water resistance, not particularly surprising. It does have a lug-to-lug of, I cannot remember. It doesn't say in this short descriptor here. I thought the article did, though. So I'm scrolling back up. Hate to do that to you guys, but I wanted to think that I must be thinking of another watch. I think the lug-to-lug, because it's sort of the turtle case, is relatively compact. Oh, no, here it is. No, it's bigger than okay, no, it is a big one. 51 millimeters lug-to-lug. So this is sizable. This is about how the Moser Pioneer lug-to-lug is. It's like around 51 millimeters, the 43 millimeter ones, the big ones. So again, Even though it looks more like a turtle cushion. It's got a cushion case, but clearly the lug-to-lugs don't benefit from it in any capacity. Limited to 200 pieces. This is powered by the SW200 and 24 millimeter lug width on that bracelet. So again, everything about this is very chonker. I have a few thoughts. First, $1,500, not bad. A lot of depth rating. But Sellita SW200, I think pretty much everyone would say they would have rather have seen an SW300, though for the price, this isn't ridiculous for an SW200 driven watch. The fully loomed dial is kind of cool. I've never been wholly enamored with that, but I know some people who are loom fiends really get into it. But I've got this photo up on the screen for a reason. The hands are white, but so is the dial. I don't understand it. I think that's a very weird decision. And while the loom of the hands is different than the loom of the dial, so it becomes easy to see in the dark, in the light, it is not easy to see. This looks like the exact same shade of white. So to me, other than basically where the loom is, which is a little bit different shade of white, these hands are hard to make out. And I think this is a very weird choice, a very, very weird choice. So I don't like it for that reason alone. The fonts don't really work for me on this. If we're going into detail, I don't understand the plus minus and the line cutting all the way through that bifurcates this dial horizontally. I don't understand the purpose of any of that. It reminds me of a battery. Like, is this trying to tell me what side to put the button battery in? It's the SW200, so it's not driven by a button battery. So the colors are kind of nice. The depth rating for the price of the watch is nice. I guess because it's a racing watch for you being on a boat is why we've gone with a non-countdown dive bezel. But at 500 meters of water resistance, I think this is a weird choice. So basically, I don't really like it. But the price is okay. And it's got a case back celebrating. If you care about ocean racing and you like the Oliver Heer team, there you go. Limited to 200 pieces. I do not think these are going to fly off the shelf, but that is just my guess. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are a lot of fans of ocean racing, and maybe at 1,500 euro, this watch is going to really, really resonate with a lot of people. But I'll go ahead and let you look at that loom dial while I go ahead and get caught up on what the chat is saying. So I see that Tuna says that Delma is the new brand name to him. Not familiar with it. Pixel Punch, likewise, never has heard of Delma. Koji, an expert in pretty much all things watches. I think they're German. I was interested in a neo-vintage piece of theirs, but they mostly use Sellita movements, ? Well, at least they use it here. They've done a Tourbillon. I haven't looked into it, but it was noted in the article that they've done a Tourbillon at some point. The movement, I mean, they're Swiss made. I see Koji saying, oh, they are Swiss. That's my mistake. I don't, when you use a Swiss movement, you often get to call yourself Swiss made. So I didn't dive into their background, and it may have said it in the article, but I don't remember it well enough from when I read it. Neff says he has heard of Delma, but he couldn't say anything about them. So he's kind of there with Koji. And Neff says he would much prefer to have, well, he didn't say much prefer, but I'm adding words to your comment. People can see the comment on the screen, that he'd rather have a night diver. Tuna says many of these smaller Swiss brands tended to concentrate on only a few overseas markets. Well, I would get it. I don't know anything about Oliver Heer, so I don't is that particular to a certain market, like Ireland or something? I'm assuming the dude in the photo is Oliver Heer. I'm assuming this is the guy, right? So I don't know where he's from. I don't recognize him, but I don't recognize his name. So, and I'm bad with faces. So it was going to be a lost cause for me to judge anything from the photo. But, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I get it. I know Rado, for example, even though it's a Swatch Group brand and it's sold in a lot of places, Rado is a big deal in India, for example. But whereas it's not such a big deal in the United States, but it varies. Joel Bolt, welcome to the live stream, by the way, Joel. Says, between the white hands and very busy dial, I'll dislike this watch's lack of legibility. Yeah, I think in daylight, it becomes exceedingly obvious. I didn't even touch on the stark whiteness of the loom pips, which is Normally, I think most of us really like very bright white lume. It often comes up in discussions about Fotina. Look at last week's Omega revised first Omega in Space Watch, and that was a big point of contention with a lot of people that are into the Speedmaster. But here it's like white on white on white on white on white. I say it 5 times because we got white hands. We got white lume on the hands. That's 2. We got white lume on the hour indices. That's 3. We got a white dial. That's 4. And hey, congratulations, because it's white. Color match date disc. That's 5. So there is a lot of white on this watch. Maybe too much. White is not the most popular color for watches, incidentally. I mean, other than the only white dial watch I ever really hear people talk much about, and it's not that much, is the Polar Explorer 2 from Rolex. It's got its fans, but that's not even the most popular model line of GMT watches from Rolex. So it's just one of those things. But David, welcome to the live stream, and also thank you for being a 99-cent club member. Says their tourbillon is the same Chinese-Swiss movement in the Trump watch. Yes, that's okay. That makes sense in this. That I was certain there is no way they made their own movement, because they clearly are a fan of dropping in Bosch movements, which is fine. A lot of manufacturers do that. When I saw Tourbillon, I wondered if maybe they had partnered with a Swiss Tourbillon company. However, so no, they're using the Chinese one. So again, I suppose that watch is probably relatively affordable then, unlike the Trump watch, which was not affordable. I've thought about doing a video. This has come up on the Watches Within Us Discord, which if you want to participate on that, you don't have to be a 99-cent club member or anything. There's a link in the video description if you like to use Discord. It's more associated with video game discussions, but it's like little portable forums. I've been contemplating doing an ugly watch episode. Spoiler, that Trump watch would be in it. Not for any political reasons. Simply, it would be for all the same reasons the other watches would go in the list. They are ugly. Because I think this year we've seen a lot of ugly watches that could really warrant being in that boat. But I don't know. I don't know if there's demand for that or not. And I don't know if I should do it pre-recorded or actually do it as a live stream. But anyway, that brings up a good point. So thank you for that, David. David adds, the tourbillon is assembled in Switzerland with Swiss and Chinese parts. That's how they can still call it Swiss. Oh, so it's even labeled Swiss made on the dial. Okay. Interesting. I hadn't looked at it, so I hadn't looked that closely at the Trump watch, quite frankly. Tuna says, for some reason, Rado has always been the dog's bollocks in India and Pakistan. It may be marketing. I heard a very interesting interview on the Superlative podcast. That's the one Ariel Adams from A Blog to Watch does, where he interviews people in the watch. I'm going to use industry, but really loose. I mean, he'll interview YouTubers, podcasters, a lot of the people behind brands. He interviewed, I cannot remember her name, but I just listened to it this week. He interviewed a reporter who focuses on the luxury market in India. And one of the things that she really emphasized that a lot of Swiss brands struggle with is they do not understand the Indian market. And if they don't work with a local Indian expert and they don't have expertise themselves, then they fail to really penetrate the market very well. And so what a lot of Swiss companies that do have good market penetration do is they actually partner with a local Indian company. And those companies, those experts, they focus on marketing the way India likes to consume marketing. So Rado might have that going on for them. I don't know. Rado, I think, came up in the discussion, which is why it was on top of mind regarding India. But, whereas there were some other, like the other part, as this is an interesting aside, in the questioning, like Patek came up because Patek does not have a distribution. They don't have a single dealer or boutique or anything anywhere in India, anywhere. And it came up, and I guess she had asked Thierry Stern at some point, why do they not have anywhere in the entire country? And India has a lot of people. It's a large population country, and there are a lot of wealthy people who live in India. And the response from Mr. Stern was, anyone in India who's that interested in a Patek Philippe can just fly to Dubai and buy one. And while true, I think, could you imagine if he had said that to an American? It would not have gone over well. We even have Patek here in Kansas City. We don't got Vacheron. We don't got AP. We don't got Parmigiani. We don't got Moser, but we have Patek, and it's in more than one store. So anyway, I just thought the maybe it wasn't meant to be snide, but I would have taken it as an insult had I heard that statement. So Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting story. You can listen to that podcast against Superlative if you want to actually hear all the. She was a very good interview. It was very interesting. Junior, hello, Michigan. That's right. You are in Michigan. Yes, because I mentioned last time that I had been in Detroit a few months ago. But welcome to the live stream. I am back here ensconced in Kansas. And we just got done talking about the Delma Oceanmaster with all the white on white on white on white on white for its dial, which we thought was maybe a little bit excessive. But let's dive a little bit into a more well-known brand to pretty much all markets, and that would be Tag Heuer. A Carrera, right? You all love the Carrera. It's like the one watch that everyone respects, even if they hate Tag. Well, do you like Porsche? Is it Porsche or Porsche? I can't ever remember. I'm supposed to say the last letter. I think I do. So they have the Carrera Chronograph Tourbillon collaboration with Porsche Panamerica. How is that? This is why I need to practice before I go live. Panamericana. There we go. That's a weird word. It's a race. So anyway, let's skip past all that because I'm just choking on my own words. So what is up with this tag? Well, it's inspired by a 1950s Panamericana race that happened that Porsche won, is my understanding. So you can see some of the basics here. The color scheme, which I think works very well for this watch, that comes from the livery that Porsche had for that race. So it's their vintage color scheme. So it's got that. This has got the whole glass box sapphire look that a lot of people really like. That Tag's been doing a lot lately. Obviously done now with sapphire rather than how it was historically pulled off. They actually have, it reminds me of an aventurine style to the sub dials. It's not actually aventurine, but you see that it's got the speckle kind of night sky look for the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock sub dials for the chronograph function. And then of course it does have a tourbillon down at the 6 o'clock where we would normally associate to see it. A lot of brushed steel, spider branding on flank of the case. This is not a small watch. The thickness, I believe, is just over 15 millimeters. But again, as a chronograph, not particularly surprising, especially out of a brand like Tag, which doesn't really seem to focus very much on trying to get their chronographs down in size. It's just under 50 millimeters lug to lug, so it's a tad smaller than the Delma we discussed. But again, not all that atypical for a chronograph. It is 42 millimeters, which is a pretty standard size for a chronograph. And so it's just got a lot of Porsche stuff going on. The logo is actually the 1950s font that Porsche was running with. So we've got it's very Porsche. And anyway, I listed it because it's new and like everything else we've been talking about, it's limited. This one's limited to 255 pieces. So there's 55 more units than there were of the Delma Oceanmaster we talked about, which purportedly, and I think I've scrolled to the right part, yes, is a nod to the number 55, which decorated the Porsche 550 Spider during its victorious run in the 1954 Carrera Panamericana. But they added a 2 on top of it because they didn't want to just sell 55 of them. They didn't say that part, but that part is clearly implied since it's a nod to the 55 and not just a flat 55. Here you go. Pricing on this, I believe, is 35,000 Swiss francs. Yes, it is 35,000 Swiss francs. It's an attractive watch. I do not like, well, like's the wrong word. Let me rephrase. Let me back up. That's my backup sound. I meant to sound like a rewind for those of you too young to know what VHS was. It was a terrible impression, so I apologize for doing it. Tourbillons. I don't care about tourbillons in wristwatches. I have never had any interest in ever owning a tourbillon in a wristwatch. I cannot get past the fact that they do not help the timekeeping on a wristwatch, so they're just pretty. They do look cool. It's fun to watch them spin around. I get it. I get why people would want it, even if it isn't particularly functional. But as a decorative element, like I would much rather have a minute repeater than a tourbillon. So I just don't care about, like, I would look for this watch without the tourbillon and save money and have a third subdial or just have a 2 subdial setup and have a cleaner dial. But that's just me. For what it looks like, the speckling, incidentally, even extends into the harder to tell areas of the silvering where there's a lot of brushing going on with this. The watch finish, I feel, looks fairly industrial until you get to the back where, again, as many Swiss manufacturers go, you've got your Geneva striping and your machine finishing and your regular kind of open display case back look attractive, traditional style. There are exceptions. Moser, Czapek, they do a more what I think of as a more modern look to their movements. But this is what I think most people would end up expecting. I would get other Carreras over this, I guess is my point, especially given the price tag. But that price tag is mostly driven by the Tourbillon that powers it. I do like the glass box that they've been doing lately. I have never owned a tag. And if I were to get one, the Carrera would be on the short list. The Monaco I would need to try on, but I've never, even if it wears well, I've never gravitated to the Monaco. It's not a square shape that I like. I just don't, something about it bothers me. I don't know what it is. I guess I just don't like the look of it. But I've looked at a few various tags over the years. It's a lot of people kind of start, like if they're dipping their toe in the luxury priced watches, tags a common one people have started with. And since that never happened with me, I buy watches at all sorts of price points. I bought a Parmigiani most recently, but what was the watch I bought before that? It was a Baltic. So I'm all over the place on pricing, but tag, I don't know. I think they're doing better than they used to. I like a lot of their looks more now. This isn't for me. I don't care anything about racing. I don't really care anything about Porsche. So I think for those reasons, other than enjoying the color scheme, there's just too much about this watch that doesn't really work for me. But I wanted to discuss it because it's new and it's another limited model that we could talk about. So let's see. Neff asks, this is regarding my statement about the Pateks at Kansas City. Do they actually have anything for sale at a Patek AD, or is it all women's models? I don't have an answer for you. On the I have a partial answer for you. On the Kansas side, when I last went, which was 2 months ago, I do not know if the Kansas one had any models available. I was told that the Missouri store, which is just across the river, that they may have had multiple Calatrava. So maybe, but I didn't hear anything about any of the sports stuff. But I also don't like most of Patek's, like all of Patek's watches, the Aquanaut and the Nautilus. I don't like the shapes of those. Like I have no interest in owning those. My only interest has been some of the Carreras and some of the more complicated watches, but the more complicated watches are so expensive. I mean, the Carreras start at over 30, or Carrera, excuse me. Calatrava, thank you. The Calatravas start at over $30,000. So, I mean, it's a tough thing when I can get a very similar looking watch. Then they don't come down much used. So it's tough because I can get the same handset style from Vacheron for a lot less used. I can get the, Longas go for less that are the same simple style. It's, y'all know what I mean. There's just a lot that's like the Calatrava that's got a lot of pedigree to it. That's cheaper, especially once you factor out retail pricing. But Tuna says, flying to Dubai. That is very true, Dennis. Of course, most people in India, like most of us in Britain, will never be in the position to buy a Patek. Sure, but given the sheer population size and they have an entrepreneurial class, just like China does. Like the vast majority of the population in China can't buy a Patek, but there's a subset that can. And I just think it's a little weird just because the sheer volume, I would think that one, like in Mumbai or something, would be able to thrive. I don't know. Patek gonna Patek. Thelonious, welcome to the live stream. By the way, Thelonious says, telling 1.45, there we go. There's the number I needed. 1.45 billion people that if you'd like to buy a Patek, you have to leave the country is a wild business decision. Yeah, that's the part that I don't get. It wasn't necessarily that they don't have a dealer, though I still think that's pretty wild given the sheer population size and the quantity of, India has a very deep luxury culture to it. I mean, they are involved in all, especially when you get into gemstones. It's a country that's heavily involved in gemcraft. So I find it very strange. But telling them that as the answer was, I just think sure, maybe you would like to take a vacation in Iowa. I mean, we know plenty of people that a much more affordable thing that a lot of people like to do is talk about the going to Japan and buying a Grand Seiko there. Like, they go for a vacation and it's like, let's go ahead and throw in a few $1,000s and go ahead and pick up a Grand Seiko. So I get it. Like I get watch tourism. Hong Kong had a huge watch tourism thing going for it for years and years and years. But I don't know if you want to insult everyone by saying, oh, yeah, that's just what we expect. It reminds me, I'm going to bring a video game reference up, not a pinball reference, video game reference. I remember when the Xbox One was coming out, and I can't remember the guy who was in charge of the Xbox division. I think his last name was Maddock back then. He did not last long after this, but they were revealing the Xbox One, and the price point came out, and it was very expensive. It was going to be, I think, $100 more than the PS4 because they were adding that Kinect device in it. And someone asked him about people that wouldn't be able to afford the $100 delta between the Sony product and the Microsoft product. So the Microsoft guy goes, if that price point is a struggle for you, the answer is simple. Just buy the Xbox 360, which was the generation prior. Very insulting statement to make to people, especially when your competitor was putting out a modern gen console at the price point that you were being compared to. But Microsoft, they went through a rough patch there in that transition. It's not for this channel, but the transition from the 360 to the One, they are still trying to recover from the damage they did to themselves with how they rolled that thing out. Holy cow. Neff says, I don't need a spinny thing on my dial. If I wanted a tourbillon, I'd want it visible on the back, like only Laurent Ferrier does. I'm assuming that's who LF is. Let me know if I'm wrong, but I've gotten pretty good at guessing. Pixel Punch says, interesting that the bottom two screws of the tourbillon look aligned, but not the top one. Oh, you know what? We got to blow it up. You know what? That is you must have the eyes of an eagle. What a wild catch. But yes, the lower two here are aligned with the skeletonized portion, but they angled it, 45-degree angled it on the top one. That's interesting. I don't know if there's the expectation that it should be aligned. I think for 35,000 Swiss francs, we can make all sorts of expectations. Wow, I can't believe you caught that. Fascinating. Tuna says, a tag tourbillon, how many of their traditional customer base would be interested in such a thing? Maybe zero, but hear me out, Tuna. They might be trying to grab a new customer base. Maybe they want some of Patek's customers, and this is all part of their grand Porsche-driven Patek strategy. David says, unless you want to build a history with a Patek AD in the hopes of eventually getting a Nautilus or an Aquanaut, you're better off buying gray. Almost everything else in their catalog goes under MSRP. I will say some of the Calatravas that I do like, that I've looked at, you can readily find closer to 27,000 that would retail for 33,000. It is cheaper to go secondhand or gray on those watches. It's just that the retail price for a Vacheron Traditionnel isn't all that different from the Calatrava, but then you look at those and they're like 20,000. So the hit is even deeper, and the handset's the same, and it's still a simple dial. It's a question of, do you like the differences in the lug design or the sizing or the thickness or the movement or whatever? And it's tough because in some ways, like versus the Vacheron Patrimony, which takes an even bigger hit gray, I don't like the handset nearly as much on the Vacheron Patrimony. I don't like the pencil hands on it. I think it looks weird. So for me, I'd still rather have a Calatrava, even with the price difference. But versus a Vacheron Traditionnel, it's a lot closer question. It becomes more down to like dial color and all the rest of what I can get between the two. So, but very good point, David. Thomas with the Escapement Show, welcome to the live stream. I did not catch yours this morning, and I saw the recording is out because I slept all the way through that. Morning, I was reading about this tag Porsche Tourbillon. It seems a bit silly having Spider written on the side of it. I'm going to put the Spider up so people could see the Spider. I think we were right at it. Yeah, there we go. I'm with you on the tourbillons, Dennis. What use is one with a chrono too? I don't know. None, I guess. There's not I get it for a pocket watch. I've had it explained to me. But since a watch is moving around on your wrist all the time, I don't get it with a chronograph. I don't get it with a dive watch. I don't get it with a time only. I don't get it with a minute repeater. I don't get it with anything other than, woo, pretty. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. As Thomas continues, the chrono tourbillon combination seems a little overkill on the dial with the sub-registers on it as well. I think their logic is plenty of chronographs have 3 subdials, so us having 2 subdials and a tourbillon is going to look perfectly balanced. That's what I think. That's what I think they're running with. So let's see. I see there's some discussion about India's market, which I'm going to skip past so I can actually get on to the next thing. Yeah, it looks like this. Y'all are having and people should, unless I have to edit the video. People should be able to see the live chat so they can see the debate about the nature of the economy and the luxury market and what happens in India. So, it's well beyond my expertise. I merely brought them up as an interesting comparison. So, I want to go to the third watch. Thomas, you'll appreciate this one because you brought this one up. And I've already talked about the idea on this live stream of doing an ugly watch episode. This is not an ugly watch episode. This is a limited edition new release episode because we've got an ugly one, arguably. It is a limited release, inarguably, and it is new, also inarguably. And that is this new Yema, the Yema collaboration with Alain Silberstein, the Marine Watch. So, I'm sure you all are familiar with Alain Silberstein. I'm not quite sure. I've heard some people call him Alan. I think since it's French, it's closer to Alain or Alain. But Alain Silberstein, I believe he's an architect. But he's known for a lot of design. And he has had a number of watch dials come out. And you can, if you don't know his name, you'll know his dials. The weird, playful, really bold color, a lot of primary color usage, contrasting looks, and often with odd shapes, all configured into some form of a dial. And some of the watches go for quite a bit of money, quite a bit. So anyway, Yema has now entered the fray with a Silberstein designed watch. Okay. I'm going to scroll. This article's with monochrome. I'm going to go down to the bottom so we can cover the stats really, really quickly. Now, this is not, it's less than some of his watches, but this is not cheap. This is just under $4,000. It's 3,900 US and it's 3,900 euro. So there you go. That's your pricing. Not a small watch. Other than the lug to lug, this is actually a very compact watch on the wrist. Unlike the Delma Oceanmaster we talked about, which even though it was a cushion case was 51 millimeter, that is a big watch. This is actually very, very tight. This is 44.5 millimeters lug to lug, which you can kind of tell on, you don't know this guy's wrist size, but you kind of see how compact this is on this wrist shot. But this watch, this is not a sub 40 millimeter diameter watch. This is a 40 millimeter diameter watch. It's 11 millimeters thick. So the proportions seem okay, other than the stubby lug size is, I think, very surprising. Like if this is a 40 millimeter Seiko, this would be closer to 47 or 48 millimeters in the lug to lug. This is actually a grade 5 titanium case. They have DLC coated it, which DLC holds up better than PVD. You can scratch it. I know, because I scratched a few weeks ago my Moser DLC doing a strap change with the tool. So you can scratch it off. Of course, you can always get it refinished if you need to. Movement is their CMM20. I remember when this movement was being developed. This is the micro rotor movement that Yema worked on. And so it's a 70-hour power reserve movement. I believe it's a 4 hertz movement. And accuracy, it's not quite to COSC standard. This is limited, 500 pieces, and they plan to ship it early in Q1 of next year. I think they said February. So, all right, some of the stuff about this watch. They do have a shot of the micro rotor movement. This is the only part of the watch I like are the koi fish. I don't hate this watch. Yema is a brand I've never owned. Yema is a brand I've heard a lot of warnings about regarding their customer service and their QC. The koi fish are nice. Who doesn't like koi fish? Here's a question I have, just a general question. Anyone watching or watching the recording want to leave a comment, feel free to answer, because I'd like to know. Why would you use a micro rotor movement and still have this dang watch be 11 millimeters in thickness? Like, what's the point? What's the point of here? We all have our own, every designer can have their own point. Here is me as a simple, nothing commenter says about micro rotor movements. If you have a micro rotor movement, I expect your watch to be under 10 millimeters in thickness. That's my expectation at this point in the hobby. I don't care what the price point is. If you've gone to the trouble of using a micro rotor, I better see value in it. And that's not going from 15 millimeters to 11. It's going under 10. I demand it. And you all should demand it too. Actually, it's up to you what you want to demand. But I'm going to say you all should demand it too. I never cared for the finishing. I always thought that this like bead blasted look that Yema ran with. And I remember when they were kickstartering this movement. Some people really liked how it looked because it looked so clean. I get it. But it's like it's an easy way to not finish anything is you just blast it all. So then they're just gonna see it all black and be like, whoa, look at all the effort. I mean, in their defense, it looks way better than like an unfinished 4R movement from Seiko, but it just doesn't work for me because I still think it looks like you didn't do anything. The dial is what's going to get attention. Okay, so the watch says Marine here down at the 6 o'clock. I hate that font, by the way. But the only thing that's Marine about it is the starfish. The starfish I like. It's kind of cool. I don't know what it looks. It's on top, so I assume this is going to spin around as the seconds. Obviously not functional because you can't. Yeah, I don't even know which arm is top because it's starfish. Their arms are not. They don't have a top arm. The arrow. It looks roughly finished. It looks like construction paper. I saw this red triangle, and the first thing I thought was this was the Chili's logo, like with the baby back ribs. I thought this was a chili pepper. I think it's too structured to be a chili pepper, but I don't get it. Why do we have a triangle followed by an arrow? I feel like we're doing Venn diagram, or not Venn diagrams. I feel like we're doing, what are they? Logic models, where we got little flows going on. And then there's starfish. Just like all of a sudden we got one of these things is not like the others. Nothing is marine on these hands except the starfish. Everything else is the shape, just a shape, a fairly plain shape, something very different than he's done like squiggle hands and stuff on his other watches. It's kind of boring. There's just a plasticky look to the pips. This was my big problem I had with the new, it wasn't much of a big problem. It was my chief complaint with the new Christopher Ward versions of their Trident. They're very super loomy plips. The plops of loom, the blocks, they made them out of ceramic, but they look up close like plastic because they're so large and so plasticky. The blue looks plastic. The pips look plastic. I just think this watch looks extremely cheap. Definitely not near on $4,000. So the koi fish, which I don't like, the watch is called Marine, and the koi fish is a freshwater fish. Nothing about this logically flows for me, and I'm probably just too linear in the way my brain works to get behind it. But I think this movement is way too inaccurate for the price point. I think it's silly to use a micro rotor and still have the watch be 11 millimeters thick, especially because I'm not seeing like this massive domed sapphire going on or anything like a Moser might do. They probably domed it a bit, but to me, this looks like a $900 watch, and they accidentally added $3,000 on top of it. So for me, I've never loved the Silberstein designs, but I like a lot of the other ones better than this. Like, I'm not a fan in general, so just bear that in mind. So, factor all of my dislikes with that on top. It's just as a taste thing. But it's not marine enough for me to want it to be marine. It's not a dive watch. There's no dive bezel or anything. We're going to call it a marine. I would want it to do more. I want every hand. Like, where's my shark hand? Why can't I have a hammerhead hand? Why does it have to look like a triangle / chili red pepper? Why can't this not look like coral or something? I don't know. I feel like they dipped their toe into calling it Marine because Yema's watch line is called Marine. And then Silberstein is gone to Silberstein and he did what he wanted. And then the Yema was like, dude, this is like, where's the marineness? And he's like, I gave you a starfish. What more do you want? Okay, let's throw some koi on the back. Sir, that's not even. I am Alain Silberstein. You will not question me. Enjoy your freshwater fish on your marine watch. I don't know. Am I taking crazy pills here? Let's look at the koi fish because they don't even make sense. All right. Let's see. Oh, wow. More and more chat. Got it. All right. Thelonious. All right. I think I've caught up to where we've moved on. Dennis, what are your thoughts on the team's in-house movement? I don't like the blacked out finish. Well, it turns out, I think you already heard my thoughts. No, I don't like the blacked out look. I don't hate it, but I think it's a way to mask that they didn't want to do any real finishing. I didn't like that they kickstarted the movement. I thought that was ridiculous for a company as established as Yema. Incidentally, I compared the movement specs when they were trying to build it to the Chinese micro rotor movements. I think they shaved 0.01 millimeters off between the two. I didn't see the point. they asked people to Kickstarter them an in-house movement so that they can advertise that they're an in-house brand. I don't know why any of y'all subsidized it. I thought it was goofy to do. There was no reason for them to use. They didn't improve anything with it. So, I mean, kudos to them for getting people to give them money to do it. But to me, it was, and yeah, I know people were getting a watch out of it. I don't Kickstarter anything. So I just, nothing about this movement. This movement doesn't deserve to exist. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. It's not cost certifiable. It's not accurate enough. They didn't get it significantly smaller than anything. It looks just like so many other micro rotor movements. And then they just like bead blast it or paint it black or whatever. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it. And I don't like this watch. Let's see. Oh, I already clicked on that one. Neff. I don't hate the look of the Yema. I think it's fun, but Yema themselves have probably the worst reputation in the entire watch industry for customer service. I would avoid them unless they've changed. I don't know. Any of you have recent experience with them? Because again, I've never owned them. I haven't heard that they've changed, but I've also not been reading about them. So I haven't talked about Yema, I think, in at least a year. It's I don't cover them very much. So it's just one of those things. Pixel Punch. So is Alain known for making elementary schools out of crayons? This looks, I believe I've read he's an architect. I do not know if my tone may have implied I know stuff about him. I do not. I've watched a few YouTube videos in prep for, I'll tell you what I did. I watched 4 YouTube videos about him or about watches he's worked on to make sure I could say his last name right. I wanted to make sure I could say his first name right, but everyone said it differently. So I know I'm not gonna, like, that one is a dice roll, but Silberstein for the last name, I was able to, everyone seemed consistent about that. So anyway, I don't know what his design background is. When I saw Thomas share this in the Watches with Dennis Discord, I immediately knew the other watches he's done because they all kind of have this colorful like shape thing going. Like that's his thing. I don't know if he's done a bunch of the giant crayons out of a childcare center or whatever. But I agree. You definitely get that vibe out of it. Or at least I do. Space G95. What is up, Dennis? Nothing. I've torn into this more than I had planned to. It's not. I mean, it doesn't offend me. I don't know. The koi fish being on a marine watch. I'm gonna be frank. I'm a little bothered by this. I feel like at least a basic amount of carp research could have happened, unless I'm wrong. And koi ponds are somehow marine aquariums, and those are not freshwater fish. But my understanding was they were because of how I've always seen them. But I don't know much about carp, quite frankly. So it's just one of those things. Let's see. Moving on to the next comment, we've got Tuna saying, Yema, I've heard that their movements can be problematic. I've heard that on their non-micro rotors. I have not heard one way or the other the quality of the micro rotor that exists on this sort of watch, but it's one of those things, I guess. All right, let's see. Thalonia says, I dig the look. It looks like a fun summer watch, but for $3,900, hell to the gnaw. Okay. Again, pricing is a factor for me as well, which is part of the judgment. If this was, priced around, like this is something you could expect out of Studio Underdog, right? $3,900 for a Yema. Yes, it's limited. Again, every watch I'm covering today is limited, but $500 at this price, I don't think these fly off the shelf. I don't know. Maybe his designs are in such demand that they're going to go for this, but it's just not working for me. Thomas says, I really like the Alain Silberstein collaboration with Louis Erard watches. Yeah, that's probably the big one. And the Bell and Ross collabs weren't too bad. The Resonance collaboration was awful. This looks too roughly chucked together. Not a fan. Again, the parts coming together as the whole feel very disparate to me. Koji says, what an odd creation. Junior says, I wouldn't trust Yema as far as I could throw it. Well, I mean, this is a grade 5 titanium, so I'm sure you meant the company, but the watch you could probably chuck quite a distance, even if you had relatively weak arm strength. Neff says, that's a dive bezel, isn't it? The blue thing? You know what, Neff? You're right. I missed that this has a crown to adjust it. So we've got the 15-second indicator. So I am wrong. This is truly I was trying to, I didn't want to load up Yema's website and start diving in. Oh, look, they even got out colored pencils. This is the greatest marketing ever. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, I totally missed. All right. So it's like, so they do the internal bezel. So it is a true dive watch. I got thrown by the yellow pip and the round things and then the oval things. Okay. So that part's true. All right. So the watch does function as a dive watch. So the model line being called Marine makes sense. It still doesn't make sense. If you heard me typing in the background, I was checking what koi ponds consist of. It's a freshwater system. Koi fish are freshwater fish. These do not belong on a marine watch. They can be on a dive watch. I'm just saying the watch model line's called Marine. Where are saltwater fish? I know I'm making too much of a deal about something that's on the case back, but by George, I got to complain about something here because I just don't like it. Don't like it at all. So Tuna says, not that hate all fish as such, but that creation does look well challenging. Many a happy hour has been spent with my crayon. Tholonia says, I would love a mechanical version of the Yema rally graph. Not sure why they don't lean into the racing connection with Mario Andretti more. So no, I don't know either. I don't know if I'm a master of hot takes, but I do have a few that are at least lukewarm in this particular instance. Neff says, I think they spent a solid 4 minutes designing this watch, maybe 5 with marketing. I mean, they had to get those pencils out of the pack here. Those pencils didn't just, like, no one has, well, I'm going to say, maybe some of you, let me know. I'm going to say, with assuredness that may not truly exist, that nobody has a pack of color pencils on the desk that they're at. I have maybe a pencil somewhere, but I got ink pens. I got my Bic here. I got a couple other pens lying around because, of course, they just accumulate. But I do not have colored pencils just lying around on a notepad. So they had to spend at least a minute digging that up. Scotty Pinball, welcome to the live stream, said, I often dive down deep to view my mysterious core. Okay, that is a clever take. And I think Koji as well appreciates it. All right, well, we only have one more brand new spanking limited watch to go over, and I've already brought it up. And I've brought up the model, or excuse me, I brought up the brand. You're going to recognize the model immediately, but you're also going to go and say, why is this one the one we're ending with? And it's going to be an easy answer because I got another micro rotor movement to go ahead and complain about, and that's going to be Czapek. So here you go, Czapek, the Antrctique, a design they have had a great deal of success with, though I will note these things are dropping like a Led Zeppelin when it comes to the secondhand market now that the watch hype has died off and the market has cooled so much. So if you wanted a Czapek, go ahead and check some of the secondhand sites because these things are trading thousands of dollars less. They often launch at around that $20,000 to $25,000 price point. This, if you couldn't already tell, is a limit of 30 pieces per the Fratello article, link in the video description. This is the Czapek Antrctique GMT Milano edition. Okay, here you go. I'm going to go ahead and give you the stats quick because this is basically just like every other Czapek Antrctique that I'm familiar with other than the limited count. All right, so price point. 23,420 euro. So this is our second most expensive watch. It is significantly cheaper than the Tourbillon from TAG that's collaborated with Porsche with, but this is otherwise our most expensive watch of the day. This is the 40.5 millimeter diameter sizing, 45 millimeter lug to lug. So it is a very wearable watch. 10.6 millimeters thickness. And denote that because I've already whined about this with Yema. 120 meters water resistance on the watch. They have the dial is gold plated. I guess 4N is the variant of gold where they've applied everything else. I'm not going to judge that it's plate. It's not atypical to plate a movement dial versus making it like out of solid gold. Who quite frankly really cares all that much on the dial? I don't know, because the pricing at 23,420 is right in line with their regular stainless steel stuff. But I have a few things that I want to point out. All right. First things first. I already complained about this with Yema. I'm going to be fair. I am not. If I'm nothing if not a fair commentator on this hobby. The reason I don't own a Czapek Antrctique is because I ain't paying 5 figures for a micro rotor movement watch that couldn't get under 10 millimeters in thickness. They are so close, but they just couldn't try hard enough. Maybe they said we had to have that extra 0.6 millimeters because we wanted it to be 120 meters of water resistance. Okay, but I'm not expecting 120 meters of water resistance. I'm only expecting 100. And Parmigiani can get theirs well under 10 millimeters, which is why I own a Tonda PF and I don't own this. Not to mention you can get the Tonda PFs cheaper than this used. So that's complaint number one. I actually really like the dial here. So let me go ahead and give it praise. I think this looks good. Czapek Antrctiques generally come in one of 2 flavors. One is this format with the double baton, the more conservative look, which I personally do like more, but I'm a more boring watch sort of person. The other is they take this 12 o'clock and they put in an interesting font. I don't know what to describe it as other than just a very Czapek looking 12. Some people don't like that. I actually think I'd be willing to own the 12 looking version, but this is the better look. And so I like that. The signed crown, the movement finishing, all of this stuff looks it's interesting. Click on the picture and it actually gets smaller. They have a fairly modern look where, unlike the Yema, where it looks like they did it all to be lazy. Again, Yema's a much cheaper watch. I love the look of the movement. The movement look on a Czapek is far more interesting than on a Parmigiani. Nice micro rotor, all that. The individual skeletonized finger bridges for each gear train. I've never had a watch like that. I've always thought it's a really cool look. Again, the dial is what you're mostly looking at, but I think for an integrated sports watch, this watch looks great. I think there's a reason why with the Christopher Ward, the 12, which as we all know is so named because they stole 12 different designs and glued them all together. The main design that they took from was clearly the Czapek Antrctique, in my opinion. That's what most of the DNA seems to come from. But, so it's still 10.6 is over 10, so it's too thick for a micro rotor watch. The second complaint that I have is the limited edition, 30 limited edition. Czapek limits everything. All of their watches are limited. There may be some that aren't, but please allow me to, I'm on a roll. They limit everything. Everything's 100 of this, 50 of that, 30 here, 20 there, 22 around the corner. They collaborate with it like everyone. I'm amazed they haven't come to me for a collaboration. I think they've got a collaboration with Fratello. I don't know if they've done Worn and Wound. They'll collaborate with anyone. So, and they limit all of it. So that this is a limited edition is really pointless because they all kind of look basically the same. You get a little bit different dial color. Maybe you get the 12 at the 12 o'clock. Maybe you get the double baton at the 12 o'clock. The texture might be different on the dial. That's it. They're all the same Antrctique with the C for Czapek bracelet, which also incidentally looks really cool. It's they're interchangeable. It's like Grand Seiko and which version of blue dial do you want? Here's your new 5 of them for the month. That's Czapek, but just limited. So I remain annoyed that they continue to do these, what on paper are highly limited watches when the watches really aren't all that in demand. And so they do this extreme limit count, but they retail them all over $20,000. So they don't move them all, not quickly. And they hit the secondary market pretty regularly, including all of these different limiteds because they're all limited. So I guess what my whining is to say is that if you want a Czapek Antrctique, there's a lot out there that you can easily get without going directly to the brand because their attempt to control supply and generate missing out, FOMO hype is undermined by the fact that they do so many different watches that basically look identical. So I criticize that. And then the third thing that I wanted to focus on with this watch was did I hit my third thing? I don't know. That was such a rant. I did I did the limits. I did the price point, which that's what I was going to dive into more on the price point. So as I noted at the start of my kind of explanation, this 23,420, it's in line with their other Czapeks. I don't know exactly why we all know that the watch market has cooled off. So lots of brands are worth a lot. Like they're just, people are having to unload them and lose a lot of value. There's just no value retention. These used to retail around the same price, right? And then I'd see them used, and they were less. They'd be like $2,000 less. You get them around 19, 20,000 US. Lately, though, no. These things have started to really drop off. I've seen them go, well closer to 30% off. So there's an added pressure. I think people were speculating with I think the FOMO thing and the limited count that Czapek was doing. I think originally it actually worked. I've seen this work in pinball. It works in all sorts of stuff. So I think initially it worked. I think people thought, will Czapek be the next insert name here, Longa or whatever, with their sports watch? And then people will be like, I'm one of the 15 people that got this, or I'm one of the 30 people that got this 4N plated gold texture dial that looks like the mirror ceiling from a porn set in the 70s, and there are only 29 others other than the one I got in my hand. This is going to end up, going up and being worth $35,000 in 3 years or something. And that's not happening with any of them. They're all going down. And so the magic is lost. And Czapek has started to, like, at Watches and Wonders, they really emphasized a non-Antrctique watch, which I didn't like that watch, but I respect them for doing something different and not trying to just do the Antrctique. But this poor pony has been ridden into they're not on a horse anymore. The horse, they still think they're on the horse. The horse is glue now, though. It's just an Elmer glue shape in the horse, right? It's not a living horse. It's not a dead horse. It's glue at this point. So I don't know what to say. Like, if I were Czapek, what I would do is I would just have some mainline Antrctiques at this point. Maybe get the price down on them and say, because it's not limited, but whatever. You still get the great bracelet. You still get the nice finishing. And I don't know. And then just accept that it's just going to be a mass-produced integrated sports watch from your brand and start pivoting towards some other stuff that's a little more unique at this stage, because there's too many other competitors at this point. And we also have to remember the big bandwagon for integrated sports bracelets. That's really sailed. Yeah, the Nautilus is always going to be the Nautilus. There's always going to be that demand. But the price drops are happening all over the place. Parmigiani's Tonda PFs are a lot less now. You used to not be able to find them under 20,000 either. Like, the Parmigianis retail for more than these do. They fall off even more. So you can, especially if you don't want to get like the Rattrapante and stuff. So you can find all sorts. This is true for all sorts of integrated sports bracelets. We know what's going to happen with the iGeneur, that they overpriced from the get-go. We know people are going to get sick of it, and they're going to have to just dump it at a very significant impact because there's too much competition at the high end. All these luxury integrated sports watches, there are too many of them. And Czapek made too many limiteds. So it's like, you still have like thousands of these things floating around. It feels like they just are in 35 different flavors, each limited to under 100 pieces. I don't know. That's my ramble on it, but nice looking watch. So I still really like this design. I just wish it was a tad thinner. So that'd be my other thing, is go back to the drawing board, figure it out, and shave this thing down 7 millimeters, so you can get it to like 9.9 and then, be respected. Those are my thoughts. But all right. Let's see. Neff says, my God, that Tonda put Dennis on the warpath against thick micro rotors. Well, thankfully, my pull router is maybe 8 millimeters thick, so I'm good. Look, we the people, we have extra. Here's the thing. All right, you're right, Neff. I'm on a bit of a rage path. And I mean this is a happy channel full of happy hopes and joys. And people don't like negativity in watches. And I don't want to be overly negative. Always remember to buy what you want. Don't listen to what I have to say other than for entertainment. That's the only purpose to it. But if you're going to do a micro rotor, there should be a point, right? Not, hey, look, it's a cute rotor that goes, woo, 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 woo. I mean, it's already putting the weight balance weird on the watch and stuff. Like, I can, on the Tondas and stuff, I can feel that weight where that weight is. It's not like the most balanced feeling in the world. Thankfully, it's offset by the fact that the watch is so thin that it hugs the wrist like butter. but not this. This hugs the wrist like margarine. I don't want margarine if you're going to do a micro. If you're going to do margarine, just give me a full-sized rotor. Here's the thing that annoys me about micro rotors on thick watches. And no, this is not a thick watch, but bear with me. It feels like certain brands are doing micro rotors to show off the rest of the movement and make themselves look fancy and cultured instead of the practical, hands-on, blue-collar purpose to having a micro rotor, which is to make the movement thinner. And if the movement is thinner on the Antrctique, why didn't they bother to make the case thinner too? At some stage, a shortcut has come into play. And I don't like shortcuts on 5-figure watches. I would be more tolerant to Yema, except Yema already irked me because they did a Kickstarter to do their micro. So they couldn't even put down their own money for it. They had to get the community to subsidize them like they were a startup. And Yema's not a startup. The only thing Yema needs to start up is some real customer service. That's the only thing they need to start up. Okay, so Thomas says, it's a shame that the prices are tanking on the Antrctiques, not for consumers, but for the company. I really like the Czapek brand and want them to do well. I would hate to see them disappear again. I don't know that they're struggling or anything. They make understand. I was seriously tempted to break my own micro rotor rule because after all, I made it up for myself and still get the Czapek. But what it ultimately came down to is I read hands-on review experience from a variety of owners. I think I looked on Watch You Seek. I think Watch Crunch, checked some forum discussions, and the vast consensus from people that claimed to have experienced both watches is the Parmigiani Tonda PFs wear way better than the Czapeks do. Now, how much way better is really, honestly, because this is a really well-balanced watch. It's still, if this had been a regular rotor, I would not have judged that it was 10.6 millimeters. 10.6 is a very reasonably thin watch, especially for 120 meters of water resistance on it. And it's an excellent proportion watch, modest lug to lug. What is it? 45 and a half is that what we said? No, 45 millimeters lug to lug, 40 and a half millimeters diameter. This is a very wearable watch for people that want something over 40 millimeters in particular, but don't want it. Like if you worry about wrist overhang, like Moser's are right at my edge with like 43 by 51 or whatever. And Moser will be, well, they'll do the full rotor, but with their domed crystals, they're like 15 millimeters thick and stuff. It's just a different look. And this is a very elegant execution, but for a micro rotor, they could have done better. And there are plenty of other companies, it's not just Parmigiani. There are plenty of other companies that have demonstrated that you can do better. But Yema ain't one of them either, because Yema's thicker than this. But I don't know. That's just my muling about it. Tuna says the movement does indeed look impressive. Absolutely. I love the look of the movement of these. I mean, Czapek's movement, that might be half the reason why I enjoy looking at their watches. So much about this looks really, really good. And in fact, I think their movements look better than the Moser movements. And they kind of remind me of how Moser does sort of a modernized take in a lot of ways. But no, Moser still does a lot of Geneva striping and stuff. This and the finger bridges and all that, nothing looks like a Czapek's movement, but Czapek that I know of. Some of you all might know. Maybe Laurent Ferrier has got some stuff that kind of has a similar vibe. But there's so much cool engineering here. But I just feel like there still were things that they just didn't want to figure out. And they just went to market and said, well, people will be cool with it. And a lot of people probably are, but not me, not on Watches with Dennis. We got different standards here. Junior says, don't like the way the Czapek name looks on the dial. I'm okay with it personally, but yeah, I don't know if you don't like how they've applied it or if it's the font itself. Because if it's the font itself, you're probably going to hate all of their dials because they put their names on all of them. Oh, look at that little Fabrik und in Suisse. I said that all wrong, but I don't pronounce things right. It blends in a bit, but again, I think they're trying to go for a sort of, I want to say understated, but that's a little weird with a 4-in gold-plated dial, but as understated as this kind of get. They have a really cool looking salmon dial. Incidentally, you can find them pretty easily used. That this reminds me of. I think that's why I like this one so much personally. Nev says, I'm beginning to think that most of these smaller independent and micro-brand limited editions are more due to minimum order quantities than anything, keeping costs down. I hadn't thought about that, Nev, but it would make a lot of sense. So that's a good point. Tuna says that seems damn expensive for what it is. It is on par with what they do. So obviously you may be right. It's all, that's your judgment call if you see the value here or not. Obviously it's not a precious metal watch, but again, we all know with integrated sports watches, that's par for the course. Parmigianis are steel. This is steel. This has got some gold on it. Parmigiani does the bezel in platinum, but who can tell? I guess that's the point. But the Nautilus is straight up all steel. The AP Royal Oaks are straight up all steel. The Ingenieur is straight up all double the price than it should be steel. So on and so forth. So I don't know if Czapek has ever made like precious metal versions of their watch. They might. Parmigiani does, but Parmigiani's a bigger brand than Czapek is my understanding. So anyway, one of those things. Watch Bronco says, Bahrain is watching. Keep up the good stuff. Well, welcome to the live stream. We are about to conclude, but we are covering all the new, like these last week, the new limited releases, and we're ending with Czapek's new Antrctique. Oh, I now remember the third thing I was going to complain about. Oh, it was good. I can't believe I blanked on it. It's because I haven't gone back and looked at the name of the watch. The Tonda is a better watch, according to Neff. Just is. You make the right call. Well, I still need to try one of these on. So, but that's difficult with it being independent. All right. Here is the part that my last rant part was going to be. Oh, and I see Patrick from Pocket Watch Time has joined in. Hey, don't worry. I've still got one last rant to go over. All right. Here's the thing. Antrctique GMT Milano edition. Now, the reason it's called this is Milan-based retailer GMT, or Great Masters of Time. I wonder if this should have been parenthetical, or do they call it GMT Great Masters of Time? The GMT is Great Masters of Time. Guys, we've all been in the watch world. Well, I don't know. Some of you viewers might be brand new to watches. So if you are, just enjoy the feedback from everyone else. But GMT watches. When I tell you a watch and I give you the label GMT in the title, what do you think of? I'm going to tell you what you think of. I don't need you to tell me what you think of. I know what you think of. That means it's a travel watch. It's got a GMT hand. This watch's official name is the Czapek Antrctique GMT Milano edition. This is not a GMT watch. This is a time-only watch. Hours, minutes, seconds, no date. That is a terrible name. And someone at Czapek should have said, absolutely not. We are not going to call it a GMT watch. Maybe they thought with only 30 that no one's going to make the mistake. Maybe their sales team has been clearly instructed that if anyone calls asking about, do you have any GMT watches, that you do not answer, oh, absolutely. We have the GMT Milano edition, because somebody is going to be outright pissed, and they deserve to be. When I saw this and read this title, the first thing I did was go to this photo, which is now, again, I keep forgetting with Fratello, gets smaller when you click on it. And I start looking, here we go. I'm doing my best. I'm doing the Chrome zoom in. I zoom in on it, and I'm like, where is the GMT hand? I said this, not aloud, but in my brain. I said, where is the GMT hand? And the first thing I thought was, maybe the thing that I think looks like a seconds hand is a GMT hand, and this is an hours, minutes, and GMT watch with no running seconds. And then I thought, I've never seen a GMT hand like that. And then, because I'm not as smart as I wish I was, I finally went down to the bottom and looked at the spec sheet from Fratello and saw that the function is just time. That's the only function. And then in the details of the function of time, because the GMT hand is still telling time, I thought, okay, well, wait, don't be too judgmental. We got to understand, maybe the time complication includes it. No, it's hours, minutes, and seconds. It's the same old-ass movement that Czapek uses, and it's not that old a movement. I'm complaining now, so I gotta exaggerate. Same old-ass movement they use on all of their watches. Here you go. Time only, no GMT function. Called it a GMT watch. Shame on you. Total fail. They should have spelled it out. Great Masters of Time. Or you know what? Just not have collaborated with such a poorly named entity. I get it. It's a dealer. They're going to do what they're going to do. It's that's the name of a retail market. It's not a bad retail market name. Great Masters of Time. Sounds like Iron Chef for watches or something. I don't know. But calling this a GMT watch in the name. Wow. Thankfully, it's limited to 30 because otherwise someone's probably going to litigate when they buy this thing, get confused, and then try and travel with it. And are like, I can't even jump the hour hand. Are you kidding me? Total nonsense. That was the third piece that I wanted to complain about. Or does it have an independent jumping hour? I still don't think you can call it a GMT watch if it's got an independent jumping hour. But now I'm going to feel like I owe them an apology if they actually did change up the movement a little bit. I did not have time to go through all of the specifications because I got so obsessed with the photo, I got mad. I got very angry with them. So let me do a quick word search here for jump. Does it jump? Do all of theirs jump? Doesn't say it jumps. GMT. I don't really like the cheap out. Don't get me wrong. I do like the jumping hour hand. What was it? What is the independent? Ming did that with a watch. It was a cool idea. Like it makes it easier for jumping or for travel, but you can't tell a separate time zone, so it's not an actual GMT watch. Everything's just no, I don't see it as an independently settable one. So anyway, no, that would have been, I would have quasi forgiven them, but I don't owe them an apology at least. So that's good because that was quite a rant. Pocket Watch Time. Patrick says, that's a really bad name. Very confusing. Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, I get it because it's who wants to write out Great Masters of Time on the name of the watch? That's very, 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 very tedious. But, or do what Neff has said. Call it the Gmot. Yeah, Gmot. See, I'd have been cool with Gmot. You could even do a lowercase o. You could do the Gmot. And it'd have been okay too, just to make it a little bit distinct. But no, I'm very, very, very annoyed with this. It's just, again, like it felt a little sloppy to me. So that bugs me. So I don't know. I get it. They've done so many collaborations that maybe it's kind of like just fire and forget. They're trying to make as much money as they can, and these deals get them a few sales from fans of the brand, like the retailer, fans of the company, like the watch journalism sites that they've partnered with, and all the rest of it. So I don't know. I've jumped over just to take a better look at their movement from their site to see if they've advertised it as having any sort of jump features or anything, but I don't see any. Very few watches, other than the Ming. I've not experienced one that did a jump hour that wasn't a true GMT. And that was a modified, Schwartz-Ettin had modified a movement, a Solida movement to achieve that. It is a very attractive looking movement, though. Way better than Yema. But of course, they're also asking for what? About 6 times the money? So not too shocking. And platinum micro rotor. I wasn't sure. I didn't want to claim. Usually they do use something other than steel for. All right. You want a baby rant number 4? I know others do this, so I'm not going to hold it against Czapek, but all right. So it's 950 platinum standard, right? 100% recycled. Guys, when you work with platinum, I don't know if any of you do. I don't. But let's pretend we were working with gold or platinum or whatever. When you work with platinum and you're like working with it and you're shaping it and you're making things and you have leftover little bits that got shaved off and stuff, whoever threw that stuff away, it's always been recycled. Like, people aren't scooping up the gold dust from when they're making Rolex day-date bracelets and dumping it in the bin, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know what? If we were to recycle that, we would help the economy. Nobody wasn't recycling precious metal and just throwing it away. It's always been recycled. This is stupid. It's silly. It's silly. They're a silly company with a silly label, recycled platinum. Give me a break. Holy cow. He's like saving the world one precious metal at a time. No, absolutely not. Okay. I can't pronounce any of those words. Grand Matres de Temps. Is that in Italian? Is that what it is? For GMDT? That would have worked at least. David says the Omega Globemaster has a jumping hour. I would still never consider it a GMT. No, it wouldn't be a GMT, but jumping hours can be fun. And Globemaster, at least the name of the model, it works with it. So I like the Globemaster, by the way. I've never handled one, so I didn't know it jumped. I like some of the dial design, so I've looked at it briefly, but I'm kind of steering clear of Omega for the time being. Neff says, what irks me is they needed to collab with a retailer to do a gold dial. That's their contribution. No, they collaborated with a retailer to plate a dial in gold. That is not a solid gold dial. That is plate. So again, with dials, not going to be too judgmental. Parmigiani, all right, Parmigiani will do a solid gold dial like on their really high-end stuff. Most of the Tonda PFs are brass dials that are, painted after they get guilloche'd. And they guilloche that barley cone guilloche, that's machine guilloche. It is guilloche, but it's not stamped. But even Patek stamps some of their dials at this point. It's all madness now, folks. It's all madness. But yeah, yes, that's all they ended up doing. So let's see. Space G says, next they will invent a regulator with stacked hands. Oh my gosh. You know what? that's clever. I could see it. And then the argument will be, or they'll do it. They'll partnered with a brand named regulator, and then they'll call it the Czapek Antrctique regulator watch. And then we'll be like, cool. Can you imagine? Wonder what configuration they'll go with. There's so many different regulator configurations out there. And then we'll look at it, and then our hearts will die at their 25,000 euro regulator. That's a time only non-regulator watch. Neff says, people steal catalytic converters for platinum. Technically speaking, they are also recycling platinum. They are. The problem is those thieves don't stamp their work. But to be fair, they usually sell it to someone else who then recycles it, who may stamp it. So that's just the way it is. Trap Vision, by the way, I didn't welcome you. Welcome to the live stream. Glad you could make it. Says he needed this live. And Patrick says he likes Angry Dennis. I don't like being Angry Dennis. I get complaints in the comments on Angry Dennis. People want cheery, positive outlook stuff. I don't, but look, I just not with that. Not with that. Yes, we'll do it live. Well, yes, Koji referencing the full. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the guy's name right now. The Inside Edition was what that's from. He ended up being a big time conservative commentator on Fox News for Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly. We'll do it live. That's an epic rant. We've referenced here before. Now going, it's not even gold. Get out of here. It is gold. It's plated in gold. Like this Bulova Accutron I'm wearing, this is 10 karat gold filled. So a little bit thicker than plate, but not solid gold watch. This is gold plate, I believe, plated. I think they call it that. Let's do a quick search. Plate. Yep. Oh, I say it right here in the subheader. Stunning gold plated dial. So there you go. Yes, it's plate. Wait, I didn't have the thing loaded. There you go. Here's the text. It's plate. Sorry, guys. It's plate. Watch Bronco. GMT is just an Italian retailer they're doing this collab with. Yes, that was the part that confused me. I mean, to be fair, I did read the start of the article, and I saw that it was called Great Masters of Time, but I still thought that they did a GMT watch with Great Masters. Think of that. That's like Inception. It's like, blah, we got Great Masters of Time, and inside the Great Masters of Time is the GMT watch we all wanted. But no, this is just the regular time only movement I don't know how many movements Czapek has. I think they only use this one for the Antrctique. I think that's it. I don't think it's Grand Seiko, except Grand Seiko does have quartz, spring drive, and mechanical movements of a variety of flavors. So actually, it's not like Grand Seiko at all. My comparison was I like to just change up the dials and keep everything else the same, which for manufacturing reasons and economies of scale, it does make total sense. I get it. It's just, it starts to feel samey because it is samey. Patrick says, Christopher Ward collabs with Andrew Morgan watches to make a red dial. So inspiring. I have the watch looks good. I mean, I don't like the Bel Canto's look in general, but like, the red looks good, but yeah, it's like, we went with red, put my brand on the back. Collaboration for the win. Where's my great collab where all I have to do is pick a color and I get all the credit? That's what I need. And yes, Koji confirming Bill O'Reilly for we'll do it live. And Watch Bronco goes, that's confusing though. It's very confusing. It took me longer to figure out than it should have. Quite frankly, I'm embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed for them. I'm embarrassed for myself for not identifying the failure immediately. But I was on the struggle bus trying to suss it out for a little bit because I started to think that the GMT hand was hit. I mean, I started to get really creative. Like, did they pull a page out of Parmigiani and straight up hide the GMT hand underneath the regular? Because that's what Parmigiani does. Parmigiani has their GMT version of the Tonda. Not the best GMT. It's a cool function, but there's no 24-hour bezel. So it's like not the most functional. But they emphasize this understated elegance thing or whatever. So anyway, they hide the GMT hand under the hour hand, and then a gold hand pops out and you can jump it around like you would a regular GMT hand. They also don't have a seconds hand on their watch. But so at first I thought, did they hide it? And I thought, there's no way they did the exact same thing Parmigiani did. And so then I thought this was the GMT hand. And that's where it's like, I was just getting stupid because there's no way that was Czapek didn't lose the plot that badly. They're not actually going to make something that looks exactly like a seconds hand and just say it's the GMT hand. That would just be goofy. So finally I went down and looked at the specs on it. And it was just one of those things. Delma says, who do you think about the new Echo Nutra Titanium Rectangle Tank Style watch? Or what do I think of it? I don't know what you're talking about. So I don't think anything. So if you hear me typing, it's because I'm going to go ahead and pull it up because the best I can do is immediately give you a reaction. I think I saw something. Okay. I have seen this. I didn't spend any time with it. So I do know what you're talking about. I didn't recognize the brand name because I don't know it historically. So I've got their site pulled up, not a link in the show description. So this, I didn't love it. Price ain't bad at $1,500. The thing about it, gosh, I wish there wasn't so much in, there we go. It's so monochrome. I get it to all right. It's decently designed. I would rather get something else than this. It's done a decent enough job at Art Deco, but here's the thing. I heard someone point this out. I think it was on the Blog to Watch's podcast, not Superlative, but a Blog to Watch. But I think it was still Ariel Adams who made the comment. But one of the things, look at the Reverso at some time. They've got these horizontal stripes at the top and the bottom of the case. And people have like polished those out in like Photoshop to see what the watch looks like without that. And it looks weird. It looks off. It doesn't look properly Art Deco. When I look at the dial, I actually really like a lot of this execution with the way they've done the indices, the balance of it all. I'm not a huge fan of this look to the small seconds, but I actually probably prefer it without small seconds at all. But, and maybe say Echo and then Nutra down here. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm nitpicking. But when I get to the rest of the case being in titanium, the crown looks industrial. The bead blasting looks industrial. So this looks like this cool carved Art Deco thing. And then I move into the machine age and I find it incongruous. And because of that, I wouldn't buy it. So that's my thought. I think it looks reasonably well finished, especially for the price point, a good size. It's going to feel super light as titanium. It looks like in the photos that it wears well. I really like the dial quite a bit overall. I don't, if you wanted something you didn't want to spend Reverso money, okay. I'm not sure titanium was the right choice here. It's different, but yeah, just the way they did the case, I feel like it's not quite working for me. It is grade 5 titanium, so they've even been able to do some polishing. It's hard to see on the edges and stuff, but yeah, it's just not enough. I don't know. Most of it it looks too titanium, I guess, is my rambling answer. Is it looks too titanium for me, but it looks okay. Like it's better than a lot of rectangle watches that are more trying to copy the Cartier tank, in my opinion. So kudos for the creativity for sure. Trapfisher says, I'm not looking for anything serious, so I'm waiting to see the new Spinnaker collaboration with the Seconde collaboration. Okay, I've looked a little bit at that. I've never been really into Seconde designs, though, so not really for me. Tuna says, it reminds me of my 1980 Seiko Lascelles. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Koji says, I'm weird and I prefer a rectangular small seconds on a rectangular watch, but otherwise I like the dial. And that may be part of it. And I did have a Reverso that did have the rectangular small seconds. So this just feels a little generic compared to everything else about the watch. I mean, there are a few other things. I kind of wondered about if the minute hand should be a Breguet style to match the hour hand versus the pencil. I think it looks, that wouldn't stop me from buying it though. Net feels it's too drab. It's definitely going for a monochrome look. So that's going to be polarizing. But Koji questions about the idea of it was with blued hands. I don't know if it would work as well with blued hands with everything else being exactly the same. Trap Vision finds it gothic looking, and that's probably a really good descriptor, though nothing about the case design has that. I don't know if I want to say the romanticism, but when I think gothic and I think cathedrals, I still think like elaborate gargoyles, carvings and stuff. And this again is just bead blasted until you get to the polished portion. Here's an idea I'd throw out to you. Completely unrealistic at the price point, but imagine. Let's see if I can get in a little. Probably as close as I really can with the way this works. But, well, maybe if I close this out. There we go. There we go. All right. Here you go. You see the side. Imagine if this had like a motif carved into it where, and it wouldn't have to be like gargoyles, but I'm like talking just like swirls or something where that's where the beading is. Everything else is an engraving. And so you actually have patterning like a guilloche. Like sometimes gun barrels in the old day, like really fancy ones would be carved out with, it could be a leaf pattern or floral pattern or just swirls and stuff. Just basically so that there's like this detail towards the edges. And then when you move into the center, you've got the Art Deco simplicity. This is simple on simple, but this is Art Deco simple. And then this feels like modern titanium finishing simple. And that's the part that would be why I wouldn't buy it. But yes, it's under 6 millimeters in diameter, as Thelonious has pointed out. This is an extreme. This is gonna. I don't know if they've listed the weight here, but holy cow, this is gonna be light. You're not gonna. If you hate the feel of a watch on your wrist, this would definitely be one to try out. Because wow, manual wind, of course, to get it that thin, which I think is appropriate for watches like this. Interesting texture to the. This is a. I'm sure it feels fine in the hand, as small as it is, but that crown doesn't look like it belongs on this watch to me. It looks too it looks too industrial. Again, I think it should be a more notched Art Deco, more Reverso, I guess. But I'm very biased in favor of the Reverso. Pixel says, it's the Echo Nutra dial font that looks out of place on this watch for me. I like the monochrome look, though, personally. It is a very modern logo that they've got. But, of course, we're used to brands not changing up their logos for to fit with the theme of the watch. So I'm not surprised at it, but I do understand it. And Tuna does throw out like a fish motif. Sure. And I'll tell you what, they can call it the Echo Nautica to talk about the oceans. And then they could carve koi on it, which are freshwater fish and would make no sense for a marine themed watch. But they're not Yema, so they're not going to do that. Okay. I'm going to end it here. We went way over, especially for what I thought were going to be fairly simple watches. But hey, you guys were pretty engaged with it. So thank you so much for everyone who's able to tune in live. Sorry for the rants for those that don't like that sort of thing. I didn't realize I was going to end up having as much of a visceral reaction to the Yema collab and the Czapek collab that I did, but it is what it is. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like. If you're watching the recording, leave comments on this. Anything that you want to share your thoughts on any of the 4 watches we covered, or on the Echo Nutra that we talked about, because I will go back and read those. I do appreciate that. And I will stop for now. Don't know when the next stream will be, though I will plan to be back on next Saturday. So we will at least expect that for a live stream episode. Otherwise, I hope you all have a really good weekend and have a great day.